What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing another video talking about the upcoming ban list. Now, my last video was 5 cards that need to go on the ban list come, I guess not necessarily December 15th, but whenever they release the ban list that's based off of the no sooner than date of December 15th. We know it's not always going to be on that exact date, but hopefully somewhere around there, maybe the new year, something like that, wouldn't be too crazy. So today we're going to do the opposite. We're going to talk about 5 cards that I really want to see come off the list. I don't think they're necessarily format fixers that need to come off the list to fix everything, like smooth everything out, but these are definitely things that I think have done their time, done their sentence, and I think they can come off, and I think it would be great for multiple strategies that aren't already tier 1, right? And that's the whole goal, right? Is like once things get power crept, once the format has changed, and some of these things that went on the ban list years ago or months ago have kind of been pushed aside, and even if they were still in the format, wouldn't be played as much. I think they can come back, right? And that's part of what I want to talk about here, but I also think there is some level out stuff as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. But actually, one more thing before we do, I do want to make note that like, I'm not going to talk about the obvious ones on here. Like, clearly I could say Called by the Grave. Konami, you hit Called by the Grave to 1. You didn't really need to. A lot of people think it's going to be to try and sell Crossout Designator whenever it gets released. That still could be the case, but that's an obvious one that easily could come back off the list. You could talk about like Toad and ABC Dragon Buster going from 2 to 3. Won't really make that big of a difference format-wise, but it's nice for those decks. Same thing with Searing Graph and like other obvious ones. Like that Dynamite Knight could probably come off the list, and it should, it wouldn't really affect much. But these are specific ones that might be somewhat a little bit more controversial, so that's why I wanted to make this video. So I've got 2 monsters, 2 spells, and 1 trap as far as what I got on here, and let's jump in with the monsters. We're gonna go monster, spells, trap in that order. First up is Orcus Harp Horror. Now I know what you might be thinking is like, John, what, already with the Harp Horror? You're coming out with bangers out the gate. Because Harp was scary, man. I mean, legitimately for a year, Orcus was the best deck in the game, and even months before that, they were still like a contender for sure. Even before they actually hit their stride with Dingirsu and some of their other key cards that they got a little bit later on. But I understand why you might be scared, like have a little bit of reservations about it. But just think about how much Orcus has done in the last 6 months. I'll give you a hint on how much they've done. Nothing. Mech Knights have done, like pure Mech Knights have done more than Orcus have in the last 6 months. They're taking advantage of their new awesome normal summon more than they are. And I think part of it is they don't have ways to play through disruptions. A lot of times 1 hand trap on their normal summon stops their entire play. But something like having something like Harp in the deck gives them a lot more potential to play through disruptions, even just at 1. And that's what I'd like to see. I don't want this to go back to 3 right out the gate. I want to see it go to 1 because I think that will be doable. That will give the deck the nice little push, the nice little availability of playing through disruption that it didn't have before, and allow them to really compete much better than they were before. It's not a huge bump for them, but it is nice, and I think this is the card to do it. Just give them a little gimme. If you give them 1 and it still doesn't do anything, give them 2, give them 3. I don't care if it doesn't do anything. Maybe that's what they need to be playable again, and that's what I want, is more playable decks in the game. So 100% Orcus Harp Horror to 1, and then maybe later even further. Next up on the list, we have Salaman Great Mirage Stallion. Now, this is another one that's kind of weird to me because I've heard nobody talk about this one. I've heard people talk about Harp and say that, like, Orcus, so many people love Orcus, and the fact that they're not even playable because they don't have Harp is one thing. Nobody talks about Salaman Great Mirage Stallion. Now, I get it. Salamangreats are still arguably tier 2, but I think they're more close to Rogue at this point, right? Like, I think people could argue that Dinos have fallen from tier 1 to tier 2. They're kind of the baseline for tier 2 decks. Salamangreats ain't on Dino's level. I'll tell you that right now. I think a lot of people would agree when they say Salamangreats have been very power crept to this point, which I think is good because they have 3 hits on the ban list. So Konami doesn't have to worry about giving them more new cards to make them, like, raise them up. They can just slowly remove stuff off the list. And I think one of the things they could start with is Mirage Stallion coming off the list. I mean, this was an awesome power card for them. It makes multiple cards in their deck right now better than they were before. Like, Spinny has been an okay extender for a while, but it hasn't felt that impactful, but now feels much better with something like Mirage Stallion because Spinny won't get banished. It'll actually still sit in your grave, and you'll be able to use it as an extender on the following turn, making it feel like Salamangreat of old, like with an even stronger grind game, because that's what this deck needs. This also adds extra removal, spot removal for monsters. which is really, really nice for the strategy. They definitely missed that a little bit. I think this would be fine. I think maybe this could push Salaman up to high-end tier 2. Just a nice little buff there, but I don't see it going much higher than that, to be honest. You could put it at 3 also, because most people played 1. Some people played 2 of it, so if you're that worried about it, you could put it at 1. But honestly, I think you could pull it off the ban list, and I don't think anybody would really complain too much. Because like Salaman hasn't been doing much. It's been slowly power crept in the game. So I think Mirage Stallion to 1 or 3, whatever you want, Konami, I think it would be totally fine, and I think a lot of people would like it, because Salaman is a very friendly deck because it's very budget to a lot of players, wanting to play competitive but not having the money. So this would be a great little gimme for those players. So yeah, Mirage Stallion number 2. Moving on to number 3, Instant Fusion. Now this one's definitely going to have a little more controversy behind it. It's kind of a scary one, right? We've seen Instant Fusion be insanely powerful. We have generic cards that make this card pretty dang good. We have stuff like Thousand Eyes Restrict that's just makes us a generic, pretty good card going second that has to bait and negate a lot of the time. As well as going first, we have something like Millennium Eyes Restrict to give this card value, give you a little bit of protection from certain hand traps, which is not too shabby at all. Or just be a general extender. I mean, keep in mind there are some archetypes that just have their own level 5 or lower fusion monsters, and so just having this, something like Prank Kids, something like potentially Shadalls, this gives like a nice extender. Or generic decks that just need generic types on the field, so like Infernobles just need warriors, so you could just use this and pull out Flame Swordsman, I believe is level 5, like boom, Fire Warrior, that's a pretty good extender. Or you could look at something like Dragons, just summon any Dragon Fusion that's level 4 or lower or whatever, and then be able to make the Link one, and then be able to keep extending on that, and it could be a decent extender for them. And I understand why that's scary, but it's not once per turn. Or I'm sorry, it is a once per turn. So, you know, like putting it at 3 isn't like, oh my god, you can't just mind control. And that's why I think mind control is at 1 right now. This is a hard once per turn. So multiples are dead, right? So that kind of scares you away from playing 3. And the other big thing that nerfs this is it's going to cost you extra deck slots. A lot of these decks are going to be forced. If you're going to play this, you got to play the extra deck slots to make this card work. There are very specific examples otherwise, like decks that just already have the targets for it in their extra deck. But other than that, like, I think this card could easily be you know, swapped around for something to 3, and I think it would be fine. I think it'd be cool. We have, as far as going second cards, that if Konami's scared about having too many going second cards, well, we just added Zoo King Alpha. A lot of people are playing Pankratops in this format, and we've got Lightning Storm, evenly matched. Raigeki could go to 3. I didn't even put that on this list because I thought it was actually a little bit obvious, right? That at this point, if we have Lightning Storm and evenly matched, we could put Raigeki to 3. No big deal, right? I feel like no matter what situation it's going to be used in, it's not overly broken in any of those situations. And so for that reason, I think Instant Fusion could be fine. Could be fine at more than 1. So Instant Fusion is number 3 on my list. Moving on to number 4. We're getting kind of up there in time already because I'm spending too much time talking about these cards. Scapegoat. I talked about this on my last ban list prediction video, or wish list, whatever you want to call it. I would love to see Scapegoat. Don't even put it to 2, Konami. Just put it to 3. I mean, I'd be happy with 2 also, but like, I know what people have said for a while. Token generating cards are busted, but not slow token generating cards, okay? Okay, it's busted when you can summon tokens your very first turn you want to summon them, use them as synchro material, and climb to multiple negations, right? That's when it's insanely strong. This card doesn't do that. You're going to set it. Technically, you could use it on your first turn, but what's the point? You lock yourself out of summoning. They can't be tributed for a tribute summon. What's the point, right? So you'd have to set this card for an entire turn. We know how fast-paced Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in 2020, right? Like, this card's so slow, but still there are certain decks that I look at and I go, this card's kind of cool for them. Like, it'd be a nice little power boost to this deck that's a little bit underwhelming, but it'd be nice to have that power push of just Scapegoat for 4 tokens. If they don't clear all the tokens, you've got Link Fodder to make a generic like Nightmare removal play next turn, and then go into an Avermax or something, or a Boral Sword access code or whatever, and try and make a push. I think this card is totally justified. I think it's a cool card. It's a fun tech in certain decks, but terrible going second. We know that. So yeah, I think Scapegoat would be really cool in a control format. This card would really excel, and I think it'd be really cool. Feel like a really powerful card. But if we're not in control format, it's not that good at all, right? So I think this card can totally come off. It's too slow to be really like everywhere like it was with like Trick Stars for a while, and I think that'd be totally fine. So Scapegoat, please bring Scapegoat to at least 2, but 3 would be awesome as well. Konami, I love you, do that. And then the last card on the list is Skill Drain. And I know a lot of people might look at this and be like, John, are you serious? And you guys know I like control decks, and that's part of why I put this on here as a control player, a control lover of sorts. But when you look at the last couple formats we've had, our formats have been combo, combo, combo. Like, really. I mean, like, this format right now, what are the 4 best decks in the game? The 4 best decks in the game are Infernoble Dragon Link, extremely heavy combo decks. Virtual World could arguably be tier 1, very combo-y, right? Just getting the VFD. And Dinosaurs, which aren't necessarily a combo deck, but let's be honest, they've evolved to do combos to get the higher ceiling boards that they want, especially going first. But like, they still do combo-y type things. And so we haven't seen a control-ish format since like a while. We had Spiral format at the beginning of the year, where Spirals were back to being the best deck in the game. We've had Emancipator, and even when Eldritch was good, it was Synchro Eldritch, just doing synchro combos. It was still a combo deck, right? Like, we've seen all these combo decks, and I think the big thing with Skill Drain is like only select decks can play this card. I know this card kind of feels unfair, but like, if you're playing a certain meta deck, you should have an out to a card like this, because the same cards that out Mystic Mine. Right? So you should already be having those kinds of cards played anyway. Your side deck for sure will have something that can handle a card like this. I know it's an insane floodgate, but I just think like it's one of those, look at the OCG. It doesn't even come up that often. There are certain decks that play it, and it's very strong in those decks, but definitely not. There are definitely plenty of outs to it. It only stops effects on the field. They can still activate, they just won't resolve. So there's other ways that you can do cool things to like work around certain plays. And I just think like the decks that can play it definitely miss out and wish they could play 3, because it would give them a nice little power boost. And we haven't seen ourselves in a control format in a while. Not that I'm saying we need a full control format, but this would help those control decks, because we don't see these control decks really doing as well. Like Zodiac's okay, Invoke Dogmatic is okay, right? Like, these control decks are not insane. They're like tier 2 at best, and this could maybe be the difference between tier 2 and maybe having 1 or 2 arguably tier 1. Because like Zodiac can't play this card. Invoke Dogmatica I don't think can play this card, right? And those are the best 2 control decks in the game. So what is this really buffing? It's not buffing anything that's already too good. So I don't know. I think it'd be a cool card. I'd like to see it go to 3. And that's going to do it here. Alright guys, you know the drill. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think on these picks? These are 5 cards that I want off the ban list. If we get 2... oh man, if we got 3 of them, like 3 of these cards to like go the way I'm saying they should, I would be ecstatic. Combine that with like the cards I said must be banned, and this ban list would be so good, right? But 1 or 2 and I'd be satisfied, right? I just think all of these have had their time. I think in one way or another they've been power crept, or they're not as good as they used to be, right? And I think they're totally fine. They're too slow. They're, you know what I mean? There's too many outs at this point for like skill drain and stuff. Like, there's so many things, right? I think they all have their why they're very good, and why they should come off to like help the things that they'll help. But also they have their weaknesses, just like every card does. And I think their weaknesses are finally caught up to them to make them more fair in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why I'd like to see them come back off the list in some way, shape, or form. So that's going to do it for me here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, throw your comments down below on what you think on these picks, or if you think there's something different you'd like to see in this slot, something that you specifically would like to see come off the ban list. And that's going to do it for me here. I love you. Peace. Subscribe if you haven't. All that stuff. Bye.